Today's episode of The Walk Show is brought to you in part by Jam Spots. Established in 1989, that's over 30 years, Jam Spots has provided safe and accessible spaces for musicians to create and collaborate. They have hourly, weekly, and monthly rentals to suit your needs. And here's the thing, these rooms rent out at artist-friendly rates. Cause let's face it, we can't all be John Bon Jovi. The best part about Jam Spots is its rich history in the Guelph music scene. It truly is a big part of the local scene and even has a music community within itself. And I should know, almost every band I've ever been a part of has had a room with Jam Spots. That's a ton of rehearsals, photo shoots, and even a music video we shot there with A Rise and Ruin. If you're looking for a space within our music community, check out jamspots.com. That's JAMSPOTS.com. Jam Spots. Make some noise! Howdy, folks. Welcome to The Walk Show, podcasting on all major platforms and broadcasting on Hypernova Radio. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky. And if you want to support the show with your dollars, you can subscribe over on Patreon for $5 a month. I'm Derek Prince-Cox, and I hope you're all keeping well. Otis is slowly making some progress. He's been dealing with an IBD flare-up for the last week, and we're trying some different meds to calm it down. But when this happens, it really does take over your whole life. If anyone out there in listener land has ever dealt with a pet going through IBD or any gastrointestinal disease, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever thought about supporting the show on Patreon or grabbing some merch, this would be a great time to do so. We have a fantastic vet, and they're not unreasonable, but multiple trips inside of a small window of time, well, it ain't cheap. So check out DerekPrinceCox.com for info on how you can support the show. If you aren't in a position to support financially, I totally get it, and I genuinely appreciate you regardless. Following on the socials or leaving a 5-star review somewhere are great ways to support the show for free. Speaking of the socials, I reached out to you on the Walk Show socials to ask you what's at the top of your bucket list. And here's what you had to say.
Now it's time to check that mail. I'm gonna check that mail good. Yeah, check that mail.
From John McGonigal of Jam Video Photo. Hey, bro. John says, Red Rocks. Either see or photograph a live show or cough. Play there, cough. Yeah, dude, I hear that loud and clear. I would love to play there. Hey, Apricity, let's hook that up. From Ryan Forsyth of Glasgow Grin. Hey, duder. Ryan says, sudden crippling stage fright killed my career. I want to play live again one day. Or go to the moon. I'm fine with either. Dude, I would love to see you play on stage again. From Brainsize61, what's up? They say, play the Rock Palace Freak Valley Festival. Wow, say that 5 times fast. From Daryl Ailes of Orange Hat Film Production, hey man. Daryl says, to make a living doing what I love, too bad I live in this fucking time period. Dude, that cuts to my core. I know we're both going to be doing our things regardless, though. As for me, I gotta echo what Daryl said, but with a slightly more optimistic tone, I guess. DMPC Entertainment is a very decent side hustle at this point, and I believe it can grow to become a main source of income. I could be totally wrong on that, but I guess time will tell. As always, thank you so much for your participation. If you aren't writing in and you want to get in on the action, when you see a listener question pop up on the Walk Show socials, leave your answer in the comments or email them to thewalkshow@gmail.com. On that note, let's do today's double feature preacher.
The Double Feature Preacher is brought to you by Planet Bean Coffee.
Woo, that is a tasty f***ing brew.
And by The Walk Show.
Today's music feature is Running Out of Time by Nikki Lindsay King. Nikki Lindsay King is a singer-songwriter and human rights activist from Montreal. Running Out of Time has some teeth to it while still being really catchy. It's been getting some attention from the music press, and it's not hard to see why. In my opinion, one of the greatest things you can achieve as a modern rock act is to maintain genuine emotion while still being able to grab the masses with a great hook. Job well done, Nikki. You can support Nikki Lindsay King by checking out his music on streaming platforms, and be sure to give him a follow at NYKI Lindsay King on the socials. Today's Planet Bean feature is their Yirgacheffe roast. This is a medium roast from Ethiopia. Yirgacheffe has notes of citrus and a floral aroma. Maybe the most interesting roast I've tried so far from Planet Bean, but I mean that in a good way. If you're a coffee snob like I am, you won't be disappointed. Planet Bean Coffee is Guelph's coffee company, having roasted fair trade and organic coffee since 1997. Check out what they're up to, get a list of locations and a list of vendors at planetbeancoffee.com. Most importantly, support Planet Bean with your dollars. You'll be glad you did. Oh, and when you do, if you want to help out the Walk Show, please let them know that I sent you.
Stick around to the end of the podcast to hear the full song from today's Double Feature Preacher artist.
For this episode, I had a conversation with Armando Bablanian and Michel Karakach of Derev, and I totally butchered their names in this. They were so nice that they told me I got it, but I don't think I did, so sorry about that, gentlemen. At the expense of being a cornball, I feel like we became instant buddies, though. Fantastic dudes in a killer band, and this band has a wild origin story. I think you'll really like this episode. We had a great chat, and I hope you dig it. So let's get into it. And we are rolling here today with, and I hope I don't butcher this, but I'm just going to go for it. Michel Karakach and Armando Bablanian. Is that right?
You got it.
Nice. Woo.
That's perfect.
Of Derev. Thanks so much for making time for the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, man.
My pleasure. How you guys doing today?
It's snowy outside, snowstorm, so we're hanging in there inside and staying warm, drinking coffee.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a snowstorm here for sure. So you guys are getting it as well, right? I'm pretty sure it's like Southern Ontario is just going to get pummeled today.
Oh, yeah.
It's been getting pummeled for the past few weeks.
I know. Where do you put the snow? Like, I'm running out of lawn to put the snow on.
Seriously. I can't see the cars when I'm going to merge on the street because the snowbank is like a tower.
I know. It's wild. It's like, I can't remember the last time we had a winter like this, but I want to say it was like probably the early 90s, maybe even the 80s. I'm old. I'm really old, by the way, so. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's I don't know what the hell's gonna happen. We're supposed to get another 15 to 30 centimeters or something like that. And
oh my god,
exciting!
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, last winter we pretty much got away with murder. Last winter we hardly got any snow, but the winter before that, I had this giant snowblower, and I don't know what I hit, but I destroyed it. So I went out and got this cheap little Ryobi snow shovel, like electric snow shovel, essentially. But it's not really going to do shit. So anyway, long way of saying, happy snowstorm, fellas.
I guess so.
I saw you guys back in 2023 at Indie Night in Canada. Definitely one of my favorite sets of the night. So it's great to see you guys still out there kicking ass, man, because I know it wasn't that long ago, but it kind of feels like an eternity, man.
For sure.
Yeah, we've come a long way from there. Lineup changes, new album coming up, lots of shows. So I didn't even know that you saw us there, but yeah, it was definitely a great night. And yeah, I'm guessing the 2025 is going to be a big year for us. With the tour coming up and the new album, we're really excited and pumped about it.
Yeah, you guys have a lot on the go. Before I go any further, speaking of Indie Night in Canada, I do have to shout out to friends of the show, Kristen Cholak and Paul Husband of The Next Level Entertainment. Are you guys working with them right now?
Yes, of course. Big shout out to both. They've been amazing, very helpful to get us to exactly the next level, right? I feel like with local bands, there's always kind of that threshold where you can only do so many things yourself, right? And at some point, you're going to need, the help, the experience of, someone that can take you from just being a local band to somewhere else.
Yeah, I got to know, Paul was on the show like a long time ago, and he actually invited me out to Indie Night in Canada. So I was there just as press and got to know Kristen. And, we obviously talked a lot of music. The three of us are obviously really passionate about music. And that's one thing that I found is they're in it for the right reasons. Like they're only in it because they care. And that's just not always the case with industry folk.
For sure.
100%. Yeah, I mean, just the fact that they're willing to, work with us and, for a minimum fee and just, do the work it's been great working with them. And we definitely see the difference between just, working by ourselves versus having someone that, is immersed in the Canadian scene as well, right? And has the right experience. So it's definitely been a blessing for us.
Yeah, before we started rolling, we were talking about just the fact that you can't just be like, if you're a drummer, you can't just be a drummer anymore. You got to do 10 different things. And the beauty of working with somebody or people like that is they can take some of those responsibilities off your table. And anything to kind of free you up to be creative and just make the best music you can and perform the best that you can on stage is a win-win in my book.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I had to learn kind of the hard way is even in music, delegation is so important because, I mean, you're going to run out of energy at some point. And as much as we want to do everything ourselves, we want to save as much money as possible. At some point, if you want to keep going and you want to keep your sanity and a bit of energy to still be creative, you got to get all the help you can.
100%. Now, I know sometimes that's hard to do. I can be a bit of a control freak when it comes to projects that I'm involved in, admittedly. Out there in listener land, I'm an asshole, but at least I know I'm an asshole. So it's just one of those things. And it can be hard to give that up, to be able to delegate. Have you guys found anything similar? Like, has it been tough to kind of delegate tasks to people in the camp or even other band members?
I would say so for sure. Again, when we started, when we first started, it was just Armando and myself, doing everything, writing the music, writing the lyrics, even doing some preliminary mixing and mastering, and aside from everything else, right? The design of the logos, the all the marketing assets that we need. So it was definitely a lot of work, right? Even for two people. And, as you progress and as you start to see how other bands are doing it and how, your influences are doing it as well, you kind of start to realize that, okay, you might need to, at some point, take a step back. And not everything has to go your way necessarily. And it's always, having the feedback even of other people, other members, giving you guidance as to what needs to be done. And it's always, it's been a collaborative effort with all the band members. So, we've seen a big difference even in delegating, right, and having other band members do things that are not usually or necessarily music involved, but more like social media posts, things like that, definitely helps, right? And at the end of the day, we want to get as much traction as we want. So getting more people involved is also, getting their friends and family involved and all of that, right? It's all kind of like is connected together. So yeah, it's definitely much better to be delegating and giving some room to other band members over just, being in control over everything.
Yeah, well, and especially with social media, because somebody's literally acting as the voice of the band, right? So you wouldn't want, for instance, somebody to say something that didn't represent the band's general ethos. Is that something you guys have had to talk about, or has it just sort of instinctively worked out?
I think for the most part, thankfully, it has instinctively worked out. I mean, especially, after the lineup changes that we went through last year, I think we finally reached a point where it seemed like everyone was on the same page, everyone's aiming at the same goal. And yeah, I mean, obviously we hang out a lot and we talk about, where we want to go, what direction we're heading in. So everyone is on the same page. But even if we hadn't done that, I think instinctively we were, all pointing in the right direction. So then pretty easy.
That's cool. And yeah, I guess birds of a feather flock together and all that kind of thing, right? But I mean, sometimes with social media, and especially in 2025, you can step in some shit sometimes,
Yeah, funny enough, we recently, tried to change things up with our social media. We're usually more of a, categorized as more of a serious band. We tend to target really serious and controversial issues, right? So our social media is a little bit more serious than goofy but recently we have been trying to experiment with different things and kind of starting to apply those funny, cringy videos that get traction, right? Even though it might not necessarily be the true image of the band, but getting traction and reaching a bigger number of people always helps, and getting different ideas is definitely a great thing to do.
It's one thing I noticed as well is just a little humor can go a long way, because obviously the band is very serious, and listening to your music, it seems like you have a lot to say, and it is very serious. But I think people like to see that sort of behind the scenes look at who you guys are as humans. I think that's even why podcasts tend to do well, is because
for sure,
not everything needs to be like a PR statement, or a declaration. Sometimes you can just, sit back and just have a laugh.
Yeah, I think like bringing your true self out a bit to your audience is very important. Like, in the beginning, there's some pressure because, it's the first few posts, it's the first time people are seeing you and, getting first impressions. You want to look good. You want to say the right things. You want to, you want to show your best self, let's say. But yeah, as time goes on and as, you realize what's actually important, you see that showing some humor, showing the true personality of the people in the band actually is what the audience is looking for.
Well, and it's something I noticed. Sorry, you go ahead. I cut you off.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, like, those kinds of videos or content is what tends to be, really attractive because it's personal, right? It's not just another, song advertiser or something of that sort. You're showing, who you truly are. And there's that kind of personal connection that's now happening with your friends and fans. So yeah, it's definitely the right move to mix it up and not just stick to one specific direction.
I always find it surprising with some bands when they turn out to have like a really great sense of humor. Like, I'm a huge Opeth fan, and I remember going to see them back in the day, and everybody was in black, and the banter was very somber. And all of a sudden, like, Ackerfeld would do these interviews, and he was fucking hilarious. I'm just like, who is this guy? But it really added a dynamic to their sound, especially when they went kind of more, Jethro Tull and maybe a little less death metal. I feel like it really, that sort of quirkiness really worked to their advantage.
Yeah, I think with Opeth, it's like half of it is a metal show. The other half for me is like stand-up comedy. He's just so funny on stage.
And he never used to be. Like back in the like Deliverance and like I never saw them as far back as Blackwater Park, but like right after that, I think it was Deliverance and Damnation. That's when I first saw them live, and they were still in their very serious, very somber phase. And then they totally blew the doors off. It was quite the transition. It took me by surprise for sure.
Yeah, I never saw them when they were serious either. Like since I've been seeing them, he's been very funny.
Yeah, I mean, Opeth they're one of those bands that, have balls, they're not afraid to do what they think is best for their music. They're not afraid to change directions or be funny on stage or say whatever, they want to say. Definitely, and it definitely made a big fuzz, when going from an album like Deliverance or Blackwater Park to Heritage was a big shock to the prog community, if you want to call it.
Huge.
But they stuck to it. With all the bad reviews they got, with all the negative comments they got about the album, they stuck to it. And I think, that takes a lot of, bravery to do this, right? Go against what your audience is expecting, especially after building, such a big fan base. So, it's one of those bands that we definitely are inspired by.
Well, that's cool, man. And actually, I sort of just went on to Opeth tangent naturally, but I do recall seeing one of you guys wearing an Opeth shirt. I think it was in an interview while I was doing my homework for this. So, I'm glad we're all on the same page with Opeth because I love them. And I think that was absolute artistic integrity to go the heritage route. And really, if you read a lot of interviews with Åkerfeldt through the years, like you knew they were going to kind of go that way. He kept talking about not wanting to, do the same thing over and over again and, relying on the scream for everything. There were definitely hints that they were going to go that way. But since we're on the topic of Opeth, what did you think of the last album?
I loved it. I think Opeth albums tend to grow on me by time as I tend to listen more and more to them. Like, going back to the same topic, Heritage, when I first heard it, I was like, what is this? Where's the double bass? Where's the growling? And I was a bit kind of disappointed. I was in that kind of like category, right? Where, I want the real true Opeth. But as I started listening to it more and more, and then Pale Communion came out, I started to go to the other direction and just like, wow, there's true art there, regardless of, being metal, right? I think the last album is definitely up to par with the rest of their albums. It's just a matter of time for me personally to kind of digest what's going on there.
Yeah, I think this album in particular is pretty hard to digest. I mean, most of the songs don't have a very song structure. There's a lot of different parts happening, a lot of different elements coming in and out. So it definitely takes a lot of listens to really understand what's going on. And I still honestly haven't given it that amount of time that I should.
Yeah, that's also fair. I found I liked it the more I listened to it. My first listen through, I felt a little underwhelmed. And then the second listen through, I was like, okay, I'm in. And then by the third one, I was huge into it. So they're definitely one of those bands, but it's always cool when people just meet up and we can bond over Opeth. That's always a good time.
Love it.
Let's talk about you guys. When did the band get started? How long have you been active?
You want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, we go back to probably high school days, which is like 15 years ago now. Both Armando and I, we met in high school in Kuwait, and the community there in the Middle East, there isn't a lot of people that, or at least back in those times, there weren't a lot of people that listened to that kind of music, rock, prog, metal, things like that. So when we found each other, we were like, "Oh my God, you listen to Dream Theater? I listen to Avenged Sevenfold," and we kind of just started jamming together, and things kind of died, I would say, when we had to go to college. So Armando came to Canada, I went to Syria, and when the war broke loose in Syria, I had to kind of take refuge in Canada, and I had the opportunity to get to Canada. So when that happened, that was 2018, I think, 2019, we decided to, revisit this project, right? We've always talked about wanting to build a band and do this thing, right? Take music as a career. And we combined our stuff together and kicked it off. I think it was during COVID that we wrote the first album, Leap of Faith. And that's where things start, the wheels started moving. So I think that's kind of our history. I don't know, Armando, if you want to add more.
Yeah, I mean, I was just remembering when you moved, you actually moved to Montreal with your parents, and I was in Toronto living with my uncle. And I remember Michel called me and we were having a talk, and he was like, "So now that I'm here, like, do you think we should actually pursue this? Like, we've been talking about this for 10 years, and now we actually have the opportunity. Like, if you're in, I'll move to Toronto and we'll actually get this started." And yeah, I remember like that moment felt pivotal. It was like you either say no and the project's never going to happen because you're not going to have a better opportunity, or you say yes and then you go down this road.
That's such a crazy origin story. Wow. So you guys kind of dreamt this up in another country, and then you came to Canada separately, and then it came to fruition here.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe. Yeah, I mean, what are the odds that out of all the places we both ended up here? Like, I remember at some point Michel had completely given up on coming to Canada. I was thinking of going to Italy or Germany, other countries, because it just wasn't working for him to come here. And then out of nowhere, he calls me. He's like, "I'm coming to Canada." So.
Oh man, can you imagine if you didn't start it? That'd be such a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of have to, don't you? Like, seems that way anyway.
Life works in mysterious ways, honestly. Like the things, how things were aligned together was great, right? And fun fact, I actually have a dentistry degree from Syria, and one of the things I decided to do coming here was to give that up, because that takes a lot of dedication and time, and that's kind of like a career choice, right? And so deciding to give that up to do music, for most people it sounds crazy, but if you're passionate about it, and if this is really the direction, this is what it felt like that's my calling. I gotta do this, whether it's whatever it takes. This is the route that we want to take, and it's not easy. It hasn't been easy going on, and I think, Derek, a lot about that. Playing live, having to pack your drum set every time, and get your cymbals out and all of that. It's a lot of work. It may seem like, okay, it's fun, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of effort and time and energy, being put into it.
Especially for us drummers. I'm sorry to go there, listeners, but I'm going there. We're the first one there and the last one gone. And
yep.
It's a ton of gear. It's always a ton of gear. I have people come up to me at every single show, and they're like, "Oh man, I feel sorry for you, man, when I'm packing up." And I tell them the same thing every time. I'm like, if you don't love it, then you're going to hate it, and there's no point in doing it. But like, when you actually love what you're doing, you love packing up. Like, I enjoy it even after all these friggin' years. Like, I still really enjoy the load in, the load out, like all the BS and the driving around, and it's it's all part of it, man. You either love it or you don't love it.
100%. I gotta give a shout out to the rest of the band members here because recently we went on tour. We went across Eastern Canada all the way up to Halifax, and the guys did not, they did a great job in helping me out with those kind of things. It was all a collaborative effort. Everything is organized. We know as soon as, we finish the set, this is what you're gonna do. Mike, the singer, has to be on merch, and we got things planned out, so everything was running smoothly. So having helpful hands always helps for sure.
Big time. It's absolutely necessary, right down to like who's the best at night driving, and who's the best at packing the trailer. Like it's all the things, right? Because we talked a little bit about this before we started rolling, but like sometimes as a musician, the last thing you do is play music, right? Your whole day, it's like drive for 8 hours, gas up, do the whole tour managing thing, make sure everybody's in the vehicle by a certain time or we're going to be late. And, sometimes you're dealing with time zone changes and it's just chaos, all to get on the stage and play for that half hour, 45 minutes, tear down and do it all over again. So it's, just like anything, it's more than meets the eye. But I think with music, a lot of people sort of take it for granted, particularly like in the downloading music era. And I realize that's probably a whole episode on its own, but it's just amazing to me how much goes into this kind of thing, and how nuts we must be to continue to do it.
Yeah,
100%.
I think it makes sense because from the audience's perspective, they're only seeing like 5% of what we're doing, right? And they're not seeing any of the work that goes on before it, after it. But yeah, I think even us growing up and seeing these bands play shows or seeing concert DVDs, seeing that and wanting to do that, like that need is so strong that you go through all that work just for that 1 hour on stage, and it's worth it. Like up to before your set starts, you might be thinking, oh my god, this is too much work, and I keep doing this, how long is this going to go on? And then you get on stage and instantly forget all about it because it's just worth it. The energy it makes it worth it.
Especially if the crowd's vibing, like after the first song, you're like, oh, okay, fine, I'll keep doing it. Like it's just one of those things. So how did you guys like the East Coast?
Oh boy, it was a journey for sure. It was we played really cool places. One of the most memorable incidents that happened with us, I think, we were driving up to Bathurst in New Brunswick, and it was around 10 p.m. at night. We were three in the car. Mike, the vocalist, Rand, the keyboardist, and myself. And we ran into we're gonna hit a moose, which was crazy. Seeing a big ass moose on the road, just crossing the road occasionally, at 10 p.m. at night, no lights, no internet connection, nothing. And then 5-7 minutes after, we got a flat tire and it started raining, so we had to take all the gear out. It's just been, that was kind of like the lowest point of the tour. But even with that, after reflecting back on it, I don't think we would want to change anything in it. It was a great experience visiting new places: Halifax, Montreal, Quebec, Bathurst, New Brunswick. All of it was really, and Canada is huge, and getting the opportunity to see those perks and landmarks is great. It's part of, the big part of the tour is just seeing things around and bonding with the band. So I think it was a great experience for us.
That's awesome. I love Halifax, and I haven't been out there in a very, very long time, but I doubt it's changed that much. That's kind of the nice thing about pretty much all of Canada, other than where we are in Southern Ontario, is it's a lot slower paced. things tend to kind of breathe a little more. And yeah, you might hit a moose in the middle of the night, but other than that, it just seems a lot more laid back.
Yeah, life is a bit slower there, and it's more chill, right? Here, Ontario, I feel like people are, in like fast forward mode, right? Everyone is just rushing to get things done, and it's a big city, so it's expected, right?
That's true, and even more so, like in the east coast of the States, I find is. I always tell this story, but we played a show in Manhattan like a million years ago. And I had to get a slice of pizza in Manhattan. I mean, like, I'm there, right? So I line up and I get to the front of the line and I don't really know what I want. So I'm going to look around and the guy's like, "What do you want?" Like, "Oh, hang on." He's like, he was so mad that I didn't know exactly what I wanted when I got to the front of that line. And everyone behind me was just looking at me like I fucking ruined Christmas or something. And yeah, it's, if you've never been to New York, or even if you have, you just know what you want when you get to the front of that line. That's the lesson there.
We'll plan it from now.
Exactly. How did you guys come up with the band name?
So I remember, like, I don't know, for a few days, we were basically every morning we would come up with like a list of words that we think would be good. And then at night we would discuss and we'd say, "What do you think of this? What do you think of that?" And like we had a few criteria that we were looking at. We wanted something that sounded unique. We didn't want something that's easily forgettable. We wanted something that like makes you think, like, what is that? What does that mean? And because I'm Armenian, well, we're both come from like an Armenian heritage. So I started thinking of Armenian words that we can use for the band name. And I came up with Derev, which means leaf in Armenian. And yeah, the minute I said it, I was going through like some names and it caught Michel's attention. He was like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And we talked about it and it sounded like it made sense. Because it's a simple word. It has a lot of different meanings in terms of new life and hope, and it's connected to nature. So yeah, it worked out.
It's a very cool name and very unique, but it's also very cool that it's an Armenian word.
Yeah. I mean, for both of us, putting a bit of our own culture and heritage into our music is very important. And yeah, it's great that we have an Armenian band name for sure.
It's really cool, and it definitely lends itself to your sound. It's just in terms of being unique. You guys have a very unique sound, and it's I don't know, band names are always so hard. I hate naming bands. I'm not very good at it. So whenever I see a cool band with a cool name, I'm a little bit jealous. But yeah, it's very cool to see that the name is as unique as the sound is. So you guys are dropping.
Yeah,
oops, sorry, I cut you off there, dude. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, coming back to the sound, I think it's also the same idea. We both grew up in the Middle East. So, the Arabic music is definitely an influence on us, whether we listen to it growing up or not. You're always surrounded by that environment. And then, our preference was obviously more rock and Western music. And then, in the house, you hear a lot of Armenian music. So combining all of those together is how you get the Derev sound, basically.
And was that a conscious choice, or did it just sort of happen that way because you were around so much different styles of music?
I think a bit of both. I mean, it's always going to come out of you, because it's ingrained sort of in you, right? You naturally gravitate towards that kind of music. But I think also being in other bands before Derev, and then, years later, starting to write with Derev, I learned to kind of embrace and celebrate all the different kinds of music that have influenced me. Instead of just saying, I'm going to write a metal song, it needs to just have these kinds of sounds. So I think mixing all those things together was conscious choice.
That's very cool. And I feel like decisions like that tend to add to a band's longevity. And yeah, you're always going to have like the AC/DCs, and I'm not throwing shade at them because, they're a great band. But I know from my money, I tend to go towards those bands that are a little bit of this and a little bit of that, more than, say, the band that's like, strictly speed thrash metal or, like strictly doom metal. Particularly in metal, I find everything is so just, I don't know, there's subgenres and even sub-subgenres. And I don't care about any of that stuff. My ears like what they like.
Exactly. I think that's also kind of part of Derev's sound, right? Is the fact that even though we brand ourselves under the rock, metal, or prog rock and metal genre, we're still open to doing, having many different elements. I think, the first album, Leap of Faith, was more of an experimental, or an experimental phase where we are trying to see what Derev sound is gonna be like, right? This new album coming up, it's more, we know what we want, we know what we want to include, and we're trying to add a lot of different elements that you wouldn't necessarily hear in a traditional prog rock album, right? So things like electronic music, different instruments like djembe, darbuka, things like that. It's definitely paving the way to what Derev really sounds like.
I see. I think that's really cool, and I think you set yourself up nicely by considering yourselves a prog band, because there are two ways you can kind of look at prog. You can look at it as like, traditional prog, you have to sound like, Dream Theater or Rush or whatever. Or you can look at prog as in like, it's just progressive music. And so we want to adopt different styles and sounds because it's, that's part of the ethos of being progressive, I guess would be the best way to put it.
For sure. Yeah. One of my favorite things about Steven Wilson, for example, is that, when I started discovering his music, and he's always, even though he doesn't try to, be called progressive rock, that's what everyone refers to his music as. But I love the fact that he, goes out and tries completely different things, and he doesn't care how it's perceived because that's just the music that he wants to work on. So after that, I knew that the progressive umbrella is good for us because it doesn't, put any hard constraints on what we should sound like. We're free to experiment, and that's exactly what we want to do.
Well, exactly. Like you've decided, rather than to have like the sort of stereotypical prog sound, you've more adopted just the spirit of prog, right?
For sure.
I love that. What I should do at this point is take the commercial break, show some love to the sponsors, but we will be right back talking lots more tunes, prog, all that good stuff right after this. Today's episode of The Walk Show is brought to you in part by Rock Sparrow. Rock Sparrow brings artists and brands to life through quality merchandise. They help entrepreneurs, artists, and brands with online merch solutions, taking the guesswork out of merchandising your brand by managing your every need, and all with real people. Speaking of real people, I've known the creators of Rock Sparrow for years, and I can tell you firsthand, these people genuinely care about what they do for their clients and their community. There's even a store there set up for The Walk Show. Check out what they're up to at rocksparrow.ca. If you want to join up like I did, send them an email at info@rocksparrow.ca. And if you want to check out my Rock Sparrow merch, it's at The Walk Show. That's WOK.rocksparrow.ca. Again, that's thewalkshow.rocksparrow.ca. In any case, if you want to help out The Walk Show, please let them know that I sent you. Hey, business owners, wouldn't it be cool if I was taking this time to talk about your product or service? I've enjoyed building relationships with some very cool companies since I started this thing, and I am looking to expand the Walk Show family. I work with some great sponsors, and I've sponsored events through the podcast, so I do understand how valuable time and resources can be. If you have any interest or questions about working with the show, hit me up at thewalkshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thewalkshow, W-O-K, @gmail.com. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back to the show. And we are back. And yeah, I feel like we're having such a good time kind of getting to know each other, just shooting the breeze. I feel like I'm not spending enough time on your music, which is why you're here. So A, I apologize. B, it's great talking to you. And C, let's get into the album. So you guys are dropping an album called Troubled Mind in March. First off, thanks so much for sending it over to me, man. It sounds fantastic. The songs have a lot of depth. They have a lot of substance, and I think most importantly, they have a lot of dynamic range, which I think is sorely lacking in a lot of music these days. Is there a specific release date in March yet?
Yes. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Derek. For sure. That that's one of the things I wanted to do as soon as we finalized the album, is to get you a copy to check it out and let us know how you like it. It's gonna come out in March 26th, so that's the release date, and we're gonna be doing a bunch of Ontario, Quebec shows to support that. We have our album release show in Toronto in Supermarket on March 22nd. So if anyone's listening to this by that time, I would definitely encourage you to be there and share this amazing experience with us.
Supermarket's a great venue.
New album, and I was gonna say we're playing the album in its entirety plus some of our older catalog as well. So it's gonna be probably, I don't know, once in a lifetime kind of set list.
That rules, man. Yeah, Supermarket, it's a very cool venue. It sounds really good. I think that's a great choice for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. We've played there a few times. It's always a good time there. The staff is amazing. The stage is great. The sound is great, and it's one of those venues that just bring people. Even if walk-ins, people come. The Kensington Market is really popular, and it's nice to have people just come out and see what's happening tonight. So it's great.
Very cool. Where did you guys record Troubled Mind?
All over the place. I mean, so we usually record things like bass and guitar in our home studio. Those are the easiest ones, I would say, because you're just going direct. Or, acoustic guitars, it's just one mic in the studio. And then the vocals are actually done by Adel, who recorded our first album. Because by the time we had started recording, we hadn't found Mike yet, our new vocalist. So we wanted to, finish this album with Adel's vocals. So he has his own home studio in Amsterdam. So that's where he recorded the vocal tracks, sent it to us. Drums were recorded in MH Studios. Half the songs were recorded in MH Studios in Toronto. What else is left? That's pretty much it. And then all the tracks were basically compiled by us and sent to James Zan, our mix and master engineer. And yeah, that's how the album was done.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm not sure if you cut out or not, but where did the other half of the drums get recorded?
That was also done at our home studio, basically.
Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna say, like, the record sounds super clean. Like, it's you don't hear a lot of records that sound that clean, that sound like they were just mic'd up. Like, it doesn't sound like you have a lot of sample replacing or, you know, reamping or anything like that going on, or do you?
There is some elements of it for sure, especially the drums. Actually, what we wanted to do is kind of do a hybrid mix of natural sounding drums with being able to capture my dynamics on the drum kit, but at the same time we utilize some of the MIDI elements, right, to bring that snare up, have those low end on the bass and consistency over the whole album. So yeah, that was a interesting experience of mixing the two up together.
That's very surprising, man. That's very well done if that's the case. Normally that's the kind of stuff, just being a drummer, that sticks out to me like a sore thumb. But it sounds very natural.
Amazing. Glad to hear that.
Was it just one of those things where you're kind of blending a sample with your acoustic take?
So yes. So it was more of, we recorded 4 songs, the 4 kind of like songs that had a lot of drums incorporated into it at the studio to capture, the room sound and the natural sound of the drums. And then with the help of James, big shout out to him for, the hard work he's done to produce the album like that. We were able to kind of also include those MIDI elements, and just bring the quality a little bit up, because with drums, as recording drums is very complicated, and it can be really, really good, or it can be really, really bad. So figuring out the balance between the two was a tough challenge.
Yeah, well, it can be a nightmare, and it's one thing I do know from experience is how bad it can be sometimes. But when it goes well, it goes really well. And if you can get that natural sound, I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter how you do it. I'm interested in that stuff because I'm a nerd, and a lot of the listeners are too. I don't think they mind me saying. But I mean, at the end of the day, it either sounds good or it doesn't. But I just think so many of these really heavily sample replaced, especially with the drums, kind of modern albums, they lack the dynamics. They don't really breathe the way that a live mic kit does. And I think that's the difference. And it seems like there is kind of a renaissance of natural sounding albums coming back, which to me is awesome, because I think they were sorely missed.
I can't agree more. I always point this out. One of the things that make those memorable albums memorable is that raw sound of drums, whether it's like old records like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, even though the drums don't sound as clean and cutting edge as modern tracks are, but that's what makes the sound, their own sound, right? And yeah, it's great to see some of those elements coming back, because I think we people got really used to using those samples and midis and relying on them long time. And it's definitely a turnoff for me personally as a drummer to hear such clean playing double bass, fast double bass with those MIDI hits. It just sounds unnatural. So yeah, I think the best approach is to kind of take advantage of that technology and utilize it to enhance your sound, but the natural sound is always best, for at least in my opinion.
Well, and at least just to sound like you. I mean, so many albums, I can tell exactly what sample bank they used, There's a lot of those Gent albums where I'm like, yeah, that was Get Good Drums, Modern and Massive. That's exactly what that was. And that's, to me, that's just not cool, man. I mean, it sounds fine. I'm not shitting on the audio quality, but like, I want my drums to sound like me.
100%. And that was another challenge when we were writing the drums, is because we did incorporate a lot of MIDI elements, right? But the trick was, all right, how can I get this in a way where it's really, showcases those dynamics, right? The ghost notes, the snare ghost notes, those mini cymbal hits, things like that. It was a challenge to navigate, but I think we did a good job with it.
Hell yeah, man! Oh, it's definitely a fantastic sounding album, and it's surprising to hear the way you recorded it, kind of so sporadically, like in different locations, and it turned out so consistent. It's really a great sounding album. To the listeners, you've got a lot to look forward to. Definitely pick up a copy when it comes out, and keep your eyes peeled to the Walk Show feeds. I'll definitely I will tag these gentlemen as the album does come out. Would you say Troubled Mind is an evolution from your earlier material or a continuation of your catalog?
I would say it's a bit of both. I mean, there's definitely, we're still following the same trajectory. We started from Leap of Faith. But with that, we're kind of adding some things that even I didn't expect we would have in our music. Specifically like electronic elements. I didn't really expect it to come into our music, especially this soon, like second album. We're definitely adding some things that did not exist in the first EP. But at the same time, it still sounds like Derev, at least to me.
Yeah, I feel like this album is starting to shape what Derev sounds like, while the first album was just like an introductory to who Derev is, right? One of the key differences in Troubled Mind versus the first album is we have members that were not in the band that recorded the album. So Stan on the bass, Ran on keyboards, contributed a lot to the atmospheric feels of the keyboards, and adding all those different effects was great to see him at work, right? And that was one of the things that I think is unique in this album, is the fact that we have so many people contributing to the songs, while the first one was mostly Armando and I, where we were running the show. The other thing that I think stands out in this album is the concept itself. So while the first album, we had a lot of things that we wanted to discuss, whether it's more, let's say, worldly controversial issues like war, technology and its effects, things like that, injustice, and all of these kind of like more international issues, if you want to call it. This album, we wanted to take things to a more personal realm, where we're talking about, Troubled Mind is basically each song talks about a different, let's say, mental state or mental illness that someone might, even healthy individuals might be experiencing throughout their lives, right? One of the songs that I want to highlight is Tides of Time. This was one of the first songs that we wrote on this album, and it's really about someone being stuck in the past and stuck in time. And this song was a reflection of my experience coming to Canada, right? And while it may seem great to be moving from a war zone to a great country like Canada, there's always difficulties of yearning to be home, right? I've lived 25 years of my life in the Middle East, had a lot of friends and families, and now I got to start all over again. So it was definitely a tough challenge to recreate these experiences and kind of not always focusing on your past and your old friends and things like that, right? So I think aside from it being very personal, it's also highlighting a lot of issues that we wouldn't necessarily discuss in a traditional album.
And I think that's really cool. The main reason I think that's really cool is that you're reaching out to people that are maybe going through similar situations and don't really have anybody to talk to about it. Maybe they don't even know that it's appropriate to talk about it. You know what I mean? And so when they have that camaraderie, I just think that's really good for a mental state overall.
100%, for sure.
Who are some of the band's collective influences? Who do you guys tend to agree on musically?
Limp Bizkit.
Okay. Nice.
We love Limp Bizkit.
I mean, Opeth would be pretty big. Porcupine Tree, Dream Theater, System of a Down.
I think we have different influences, each of us, but the bands we would agree on are kind of like within that realm. The Riverside, Porcupine Tree, Dream Theater, but we also have different. Like for me, I'm a huge Sugar fan, for example, right? Adding those intricacies, and even though we're not as heavy as they are, or not as creative as they are, those different influences come to play when we're at the studio creating, making music.
That's cool, man. I'd say you guys are definitely as creative as Meshuggah, but I mean, rhythmically, that band is on a different planet. But I mean, that's compared to anybody, not just you guys. But I don't know how you could be a drummer and not love Meshuggah. Personally, I remember hearing them back in '98. They had an album called Chaosphere. And the only reason anybody really knew about them back then was because Stephen Carpenter from the Deftones kept talking about them in interviews. And a buddy of mine in high school gave me a copy of Chaosphere because he hated it, because it was just too extreme. And as soon as I heard those polyrhythms, I thought, oh God, I'm in love. I love that you brought up Meshuggah.
The drummer is Thomas.
Oh,
sorry.
No, you go ahead, man. Thomas, is it Thomas Hack?
Yeah, I mean, this guy is a machine. Unbelievable. And the fact that I got to give huge kudos to these guys. Like, sticking to what they, their own sound and their own music. They've been doing it for 20 plus years, and no one has heard of them in the first 15 years. It took them a really long time to kick, that career off. But now they're, considered one of the pioneers of extreme metal and extreme, progressive metal. So I gotta give it to them for just sticking to it and keep doing what they think is their band and what their band sounds like.
Yeah, they definitely keep pushing the boundaries within that soundscape too. There's some of the later stuff, even I have a hard time with, just because I was such a huge fan of Chaosphere and some of their earlier catalog, Destroy, Erase, Improve. But I mean, it's still amazing, and it's still stuff that I'll never be able to play. So I gotta give it out. You gotta give it up to dudes that are like that, for sure.
100%.
You mentioned Dream Theater as well. How do you guys feel about Portnoy being back?
Amazing. I mean, it was a dream come true almost, to be honest with you. Like, we never thought it would happen. And Dream Theater for us was probably one of our first and biggest influences when we first started out, right? That's what kind of brought us together. And, just seeing the high level of musicianship from all of them is insane, right? And when Portnoy left, and I remember I was still in Syria, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to see them again. With Portnoy, and Portnoy was one of my biggest heroes. So the fact that they're back and with a great new album, and Portnoy with them, and they're doing the North American tour now. So we're really pumped to, finally see them with Portnoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's special for me, particularly because I remember Portnoy left right around the time when I was coming to Canada. And one of the reasons I was so excited to come here was to see Dream Theater live. And this guy leaves the band. So, you know how that feels. Like, after, fangirling on a band for 10 years, you have the chance to see them, but then one of your favorite members just leaves the band. And, nothing negative to say about Mangini. He's an amazing drummer. But, I grew up seeing Portnoy, and that's Dream Theater for me. So all I wanted was to see him with Dream Theater. So now that he's back and we're seeing them in March in Toronto, I'm really excited.
Oh, you guys are going to see them?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Man, I saw them forever ago at Massey Hall. I don't even know if it's still called Massey Hall, but it was an evening with Dream Theater, so there was no opener. They did 2 sets, I want to say almost 2-hour sets, and there was an intermission in the middle. But yeah, Portnoy was a huge influence on me too, and he just had one of those styles that he blended. He took progressive elements and he took all the stuff, like all the nerdy stuff, and he made it groove and he made it palatable for anybody, right? Whereas I found Mangini, I mean, the guy's a human metronome. He can play. I've seen videos of him because he taught at Berkeley for a while, where he would do like 4 different time signatures on 4 different limbs. So he would get someone in the crowd to call out a limb and a time signature, and then do it again and again and again. And he would play them all against each other. Dude is unbelievable, but he just didn't have that glue that Portnoy had, I find.
Yeah, and also Portnoy, aside from the drumming aspect, was involved in the creative process a lot, right? And you kind of feel that with the albums that he wasn't on. You feel like you were listening to a different band, not the Dream Theater that you're used to. Definitely his drum sound itself made a big difference, right? Him being involved in vocals, backing vocals, and then lyrics as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited just to know that he's back, and we get to enjoy Dream Theater the way we were used to. So yeah,
the way it's meant to be.
I couldn't agree more, man. That's so exciting that you guys are going to see them. I'll have to pick your brain after that concert. This is a fun one. Are there any bands that one of you loves and the other one can't stand?
Meshuggah. We already talked about.
That would definitely be one.
Meshuggah was definitely one where for the longest time, Michel would be like, dude, you got to get into this band. Just trust me. Like, get through it and then you'll love it. And I'd be like, okay. And I would, on a drive or, when I have a long period of time, I would listen to an album and it would just feel like torture to me, until I don't remember what happened exactly, or maybe I went to a show or something that I started to get Meshuggah, and I understand why, people are really into them, but still for me, it's not like I gotta really be in the mood for Meshuggah, and that's pretty rare,
I'll take Meshuggah any day, anytime.
Okay. What about you, Michel? Is there any bands that you can't stand?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I mean, Armando listens to a lot more jazz and blues and guitar influences more than I do. But I'm kind of, I'm open to all kinds of music. One of the things, that I really enjoy and really love, and I think not a lot of the other band members do, is like listening to really extreme music, like black metal and death metal. And I think, in college days, back in Syria, there was a big hype over, bands like Dimmu Borgir, Behemoth. I'm still a big fan of that kind of genre, right? But I also understand that it's maybe not as popular as it is here in North America, or it might be too extreme for some people, but I still enjoy the musical aspect of it. And I think being a drummer, Derek, I'm pretty sure you relate, just seeing how proficient and how, fast, even technically speaking, some of these drummers are. It just naturally, I gravitate towards, trying to replicate what they're doing or trying to come close to what they're doing technically. But I enjoy that kind of like extreme black metal, aspect of music that some other band members may not.
That's cool. So Armando, you got yourself a real drummer. That's the test, right? If they're listening to stuff like that, then they're worthwhile having in the band, even if you don't want them to bust any of that shit out, right?
Play it on your own time.
Nice. I love it. Every episode I ask the listeners a question. I like to get my guests' take as well. So today's listener question is, what is at the top of your bucket list?
For me, I would say one thing I really want to do with the band is work with a really good producer, someone like Rick Rubin, for example.
That's cool. I would say for me, given that we haven't done this yet, is on top of my bucket list is to play a really big festival, something like Wacken or Hellfest or Download. That would be, I think, like a once in a lifetime experience for me.
Excellent. And both musical. I love it. It's it's not like go to a strip club and make it rain, or
We've already done that. So
okay. My mistake. So what do you guys have on the docket for this year? I mean, you're releasing an album in March, but what else is on the docket?
So many shows. I mean, I think it's like since last weekend, I don't think we have a break. Every weekend we're playing a show around Ontario, and then we have one in Montreal over the next couple of months. And then the album release is in March. And in May, we're doing a much bigger tour going all the way to Vancouver. So we're doing all of like Central and Western Canada. So many shows coming up.
Very cool. Yeah, watch out for the moose up there too, man. That's crazy.
Definitely will.
Is there anyone you want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to?
Yes, I want to first of all give a shout out to the band members that are not with us today. So Stan, Ran, and Mike. I think we were blessed at a period of time to have them all join us, kind of like within the same time span, and that's really got the engine going, right? When we first released the first album, we did a few shows, but again, it was mostly Armando and I in control and kind of taking that responsibility to drive things forward. But now that we have the right fit and the right members, everyone's contributing, everyone's excited, we're all on the same page. We went on tour expecting to, get into some personal issues, maybe things like that. But it was, none of this happened on tour, which kind of got us even closer together. And now we're just really, really fired up to release the album, have people, see their people's reactions and play these songs live finally. So I want to give a shout out to them. I want to give a shout out to our management, Paul and Kristen, for all their work. And lastly, I want to also give a shout out to Adel, the vocalist on the album. He did an amazing job to put it all together. And we're also featuring Hiske, a female vocalist from Amsterdam. She's with Perfect Storm band. And, it was great to have her also on one of these tracks to join us on. So, yeah.
Excellent. What about you, Armando?
I mean, Michel took all of them, but I do have two more I want to mention. First of all, James Zan, who mixed and mastered the record. Me and James go, way back. We worked together in a band, and then he's been mixing our first album and second album. And, we tend to be very nitpicky and very detail oriented. And, we listen to every single element in the mix and give like hundreds of revisions. So thank you, James, for sticking through it with us. And the last one is Hussam, who's been working on all the artwork for the album. He's done a great job. So thank you.
Very cool. How can people check out what you're doing online?
Best place would be derevmusic.com, our website. You can find everything there. And then, of course, we're on all the social media platforms at Derev Music.
Beautiful. The last thing I do is spin 2 tunes. So first up is Derev with Room 9, followed by today's double feature preacher artist Nikki Lindsay King with Running Out of Time. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us, Derek.
My pleasure. We'll have to do it again sometime. And to the listeners, thank you so much for your time. Catch you next time.
I'm getting lost inside my own mind. Illusions pass and creep back in. I'm losing grip on what's real and what's not. Round and around an endless trail I run. Round and around, my sanity is gone. The chaos within keeps raging on, falling into space. Can't escape this maze. Walls are getting high, I'm running out of breath. Stuck in my own thoughts, help me break this chains. Get me out of this mind. I don't know how to go on. My head is light and my body's numb. Beneath my skin I feel someone scared to face this freak that I've become.